Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're back working on the C10. We're going to go in here and I've got the bracket for the hydroboost set up. But before I put that in, I want to go through and fill all these holes on the firewall that I'm not going to need. That way I'm not blowing sparks all over my hydroboost and my clutch master. I'll bring you guys in here. I point some of these holes out. You can see, like, I don't think I'm going to need that hole, that hole. I started filling some of the stuff down here. Pretty sure I don't need this. Most of this stuff in here I think is going to go. There's one up in here too. So I'm going to get the welder hooked up here and start cutting some patches, and we're going to go from there. And I'm going to get this camera set back up and turn the heat back on because it is cold out today. Alright guys, so the battery died on me, but I figure since I got the camera off the tripod, I'll go over what I've got done so far for you. So, as you can see, I've got all these holes in the firewall cleaned up, and I wire wheeled some of this area of the firewall here. There's a spot down here. But what I'm going to go ahead and do before I go for the day, I want to get a coat of paint on this, and I also want to get the hydroboost mounted up. And I'll be showing you guys that here in a second. Okay, so to get this hydroboost mounted up, it's actually really simple. There's only one big nut on here and a snap ring, whatever you want to call it. Now this isn't really, I don't have a socket that's the right size, so we're going to hammer and chisel mechanic that on there. But there's a keyway, and that is going to locate everything on here. So all we're going to do to get this on that bracket is just slide it on here, put the nut on, and I'm just going to give this a couple taps with a big hammer and a chisel just to set it on there and make sure that it's nice and tight. And that doesn't seem like it's going to come off there now. And then all you do is there's a snap ring. These really aren't the best pliers, but this guy just slides on here like this and squeeze it. And then fight it on there because these pliers aren't great. But there's a groove in here, so just tap that straight. And let's see if I can actually get this thing to go on and stay where I need it. Probably not. There, so there's most of it. All right, and there you go. So all there is here, that's in that groove, and we should be good to go to mount this on. Okay, so all we're going to do to mount this on is this thing uses a couple holes on here. This hole was too close to the hydroboost for it to be used, so I welded that hole up on here. But these are all 3/8 bolts minus that one. That one's on the floor. And then there's a couple 5/16 bolts on the other side that are going to hold on the clutch, and there's two original fasteners that were 5/16 on the other side. So just gonna hold that up there like that. I'm gonna stick my head in the way maybe and slide under here and grab this other bolt because I'm a butterfinger. Let's see here. This one's going to go under here. That's the 3/8, and then the 5/16 are going to be on the other side. I'm using grade 8 hardware on those just because I used the same bolts for the gas tank, and then these are going to be the two 5/16 factory hardware. I do have grade 8 that I could put in there, but these have the little locking tabs, so I think we're going to go with these. That way they can tear all my paint up. Get those started. And since I'm here, I'm going to mount my Wilwood clutch master up. See if I can find that. And this is what I'm using for the clutch master. You really can't see me put it on there. I can assure you, you're not missing much. It's just a hole. 2 bolts. Now that I've got all this stuff actually mounted, I can start making my linkages. Which also means that now that I just beat that hydroboost on there with a chisel, I'll probably have to take it back off so that I can make a linkage for it to hook it to the pedal. So that'll be fun. Let's find my 1/2-inch socket here and tighten the other bolts up, and then I'm going to need a wrench for the rest of this. I'll give this one a couple more just because those are tight. I'll go hunt down my 1/2-inch wrench and a 9/16 wrench. We'll get the other ones tightened up. Right here. Okay. See if I can get these in finger tight anymore. Apparently not, so we're just gonna do this the hard way. And I had the pleasure of having to try to weld nuts onto the firewall inside because I added this hole and the nut was broke off the firewall for that one. So I got to struggle trying to put those in. I ended up just running a different bolt through and holding on to the bolt, make sure it was longer or long enough that I could hold on to it and thread a nut on the inside. And these are on a bracket in there that seems to move around. So the bolts kind of rub on the firewall a little bit going in until it's all lined up. Had I not just ran all the other ones down nice and tight, probably could have done these by hand or got them closer. You can see that thing was wiggling around in there when I was tightening the bolt. And these are really close to the hydroboost. That's why I couldn't get the bolt in up here. I probably should have made a spacer to bring this out some so I could use, or so they weren't so difficult to put in. But we're here now, so no spacer. This bolt's definitely a pain to get to. I wonder if I can get to that with the impact. Make my life a little easier, maybe. Probably not. Ooh, I'm gonna get lucky. There. Whatever fell inside, that didn't sound good, so we're just gonna ignore that happened. Sure, I'll find that later. All right. So that's all mounted up. Show you guys kind of the finished product here. If I can get the tripod out. But yeah, so we've got our Willwood clutch master tucked back there. And then take a step back and we've got the hydroboost mounted up. So now I think I'm just going to go through and I'm going to paint that firewall up because I'm going to get out of here for the day. And I've also got a proportioning valve from Willwood that will mount to the studs on this hydroboost. And I should be able to put a proportioning valve down here that's adjustable, which is going to make up for the brakes that I'm going to have on there because I'm switching from drum to disc. So I think I'm going to get this painted up really quick. I'll set you guys down. You can stare at the floor for a second. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint up what I've got wire wheeled on there. I didn't plug these holes because there is an electrical connector that goes somewhere. Not sure what it's for, but it's there, so I'm not going to try to weld around it, catch the truck on fire, or myself again. So next time you see this, this should be mostly painted if I don't get crazy and go all the way across the firewall. And we will probably be making those linkages next time I get this camera out. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you'll stick around for the next part. I'd love to do a whole truck reveal on this thing at some point, but seeing as it's in about 1 million pieces, I don't know when we're going to get to that. Okay, so I'm going to try to show you guys what I'm doing here, but I want to get this hydroboost hooked up to the original pedal. What I'm going to try to do is use the original linkage, which I can't get my hand back in there, but right here, yeah, you can't see nothing. But I'm going to use this linkage right here, and I'm going to try to cut the loop off of this and use the original rod that was on here that I've cut down a little bit just to get it in here. And I want to cut the loop off and cut this down so that I can still adjust the pedal with the original rod. Now, once I get this all cut down, I'm going to try to weld this rod here onto the end of this shaft, and hopefully that will be enough to hold everything together. If it seems like it's not going to work, I'll put a sleeve on it too. Depends on what this is coated with. I'm sure I'll have to grind all that off too. But yeah, I'm going to get my Sharpie and get that marked up and cut it down, and hopefully I can pull that hydroboost off and weld on there without having to try to pull that rod, because that looks like it's going to be a pain in the butt. Alright, let me get this cut down and I'll be right back. Alright, so there was a slight change of plans because I'd cut this guy down enough, this rod, so what I was actually able to do is thread it into this about halfway, and I set the nut. So I had about half of my adjustment, and I was able to just pick it up like that and draw a mark where I wanted to cut on both of them, which worked a lot better than me trying to hold this in the air and take a big guess and probably cut everything too short. So now I'm going to get everything pulled out of here and start cutting and weld everything together, and hopefully it'll all line up. Alright, so I got the hydroboost out, and since I know it was kind of difficult to see under there, I'll show you guys what I was talking about. So I marked this rod, which is from the original brake pedal, and I marked right here on the hydroboost. And my goal here is to cut this down right there, spin it around so it makes sense, and I'm going to weld this piece on right there. And this should thread into that piece that goes on the brake pedal to replace this, because this is too short and this is the wrong size. So I'm going to get this cut off, and cut this down and take my nice MIG welder right there. And since it just barely reaches, I don't have to try to fight the welder over here. And I'm going to weld these two together. And I don't need to worry about being able to thread it because this actually spins in here. Whether it's supposed to or not, I don't know. But I think this is on a ball in here, and this is spinning in that seal too, which may turn into a problem later. We'll see. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and cut this down and get it welded up. And we'll get this thing test fitted. And we're doing this all in one go. We're not even going to bother trying to test this and remeasure. There's enough adjustment on here. So I'm going to move, well, I think I'll cut this first and then I'll move the hydroboost pump out of the way because I don't have the ports closed or plugged up. So we will cut the hydroboost first and get her out of the way. I'm going to try to work around this camera so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm not a big fan of how many sparks are flying in here, so I'm going to throw a rag over that. And that should solve that problem. I'm also going to take my flap wheel and grind the coating off of that, because I'm sure that's going to bother the weld quite a bit. We're just going to set these up so I can spin this and not have to have my hand right in the way. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to taper this pin now coming out of the hydroboost. That way I can get a little bit more weld in here, hopefully a little bit deeper penetration when I go to weld this. And that's probably nowhere near enough of a bevel, but we're going to roll with it. And we're going to get this rod cut down real quick. Maybe I'll even put vice grips on it, maybe not. Right here. We'll put vice grips on it. Alright, so sorry if you can hear the welder, but I got the ground hooked up here. And I'm going to put a couple tacks on this, and then I'm going to, eyeball it a little bit, make sure it's on there relatively straight so it doesn't have any weird angles when I'm hitting the brakes. And we're going to go from there. I need to find my cutters because that wire is sticking out a little bit too far. Alright, these will work. Alright, well, that's really crooked. Find a way to hold that, straighten it out, maybe. Wow, that's really crooked. Oh, okay, try again. It's not very confidence-inspiring as far as the weld goes. Maybe I'll grind that down and try again. I think all of this stuff is in my way. Okay. Interesting. All right, that's not working either. Oh, battery's dead. Alright, so that proved to be a little more difficult to line up and weld than I expected, but doesn't look like it turned out too bad. I'll bring you guys in a little closer here. But it's all welded up. I ground the flats back into it just to get rid of the big humps from the welds. But it still spins inside of here. It doesn't feel like this guy got too loose. I did throw some water on a rag to cool all this down while I was welding because I was worried about the seals in here starting to get too hot and maybe melting or compromising the seals. And one thing I don't want to have to do is rebuild this hydroboost because that seems like it'd be a pain in the butt. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get you guys set up and I'm going to see if this hooks into the pedal the way I wanted it to, and if not, we'll be back over here cutting and grinding again. Alright guys, so I got the hydroboost put back in and I'm trying to get you a good angle, but I've got the end here put on the rod and it is going to actually line up just fine. But what I'm going to have to do, you can see the steering column's dropped. So before I can actually adjust that all the way, I need to get the steering column bolts back in, get it sucked back up in there. Because it looks like, you can watch the pedals here, as this thing goes up, that brake pedal goes back quite a bit. So I'm going to throw the bolts back in that, and then I'm going to get that rod adjusted. And I think that's going to do it for tonight. So I'm not sure if this is going to be the end of the video. It probably will be. And then I think when I come back, you can see that hole there. That's where the clutch master goes. I'm going to try to get that put back in and put the rod, or make a rod, to go from this clutch pedal over to that hole. So I'll need to make a spacer, and I've got the threaded rod for it. So that should be it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.